Hi everyone. Good afternoon. How are y'all doing? I should sound more upbeat, right? I think I should sound more upbeat. I should be more excited because I really am excited to be for the guest today, Dynamic Rhoda Arrindell. It's a lot has been happening in St. Martin. A lot has been happening around the world, as we all know. We have been today. Wait, first of all, today is actually our 15th episode of Gaffing. I cannot even begin to comprehend how in the heck we got to this point. How? Because we just started it and now we're at 15 episodes. So I must say thank you to each and every one of you. Well, thanks to each and every one of you who have committed yourself every week, every Thursday at 3 p.m. You're here. And even when you return back to work, when your country or your island reopen, you make sure you look at the replay after. So I really cannot say thank you enough. My gratitude is extensive beyond just my words. So thank you so much for that. Your feedback, your engagement every week really means a lot. And it actually gives us, my team and I, the energy to continue, the momentum to continue. All right. So let me know how you all have been doing. Let me know how your past week has been like, what it has been like. Let me know what last week episode was like for you. It would be good to have that engagement. I always enjoy having that engagement with our viewers. I think I should say friends, right? Instead of viewers. So today we'll be talking about culture. I'm curious to know, what is the impact of COVID on our culture? I'm pretty sure a person may be thinking, how in heavens can COVID really impact our culture, right? Well, there's so many things in so many ways as well. You see, the same way how in the US, they speak about systematic racism. It's the same way how our culture can also be affected in a systematic way as well, in ways that we are not able to see just by our plain eyes. It's beyond our eyesight. And it takes a person who are really paying attention. It takes for persons who are really within those realms, those seats, those positions to actually see and understand. And all we will feel is the effect of it, but to actually understand the structures of it, it's beyond us most times. So today we have no other than Rhoda Arrindell. I will allow Rhoda to introduce herself, and then we will go right into the gas. Rhoda, don't spare us and don't spare us any words.
Oh,
Give
wow.
it all to us. Let us know exactly who you are, what you are about, and what you've been doing all of these years.
Oh, wow. Okay. All of these 54 years, right? Good, good afternoon to you, Keoma, and good afternoon to your family and your friends and your family out there in viewerland. Yes, as you said, I am Rhoda Arrindell. It's kind of awkward to ask me to introduce myself because one of first and foremost, when I do think of myself, I think of how I identify myself as always the mother of two children. It always starts with that. So yeah, so I'm a mother of two children, Akila and Rahim, two adult children. That feels good to say that now because one is officially 18, my last, and I can say two adult children. But I am a person. I see myself as a Caribbean woman of African heritage, a Saint Martina to the core. I don't know if and I'll
It makes
explain.
sense.
It
It
makes
makes
sense,
sense.
right?
Yes, of
Yeah,
course. It
that's how
makes
I
sense.
define myself because these things are important to me in terms of culture and some of the things that we're going to discuss today. But yes, my mother is from St. Vincent. My father is from St. Martin. I was born in Curacao,
What?
raised in yes, yes, yes. I bet you didn't know that, right?
No, I didn't.
Yes, but I was raised in St. Martin since 1969.
Okay.
And all my life, my life I can remember, I consider myself a cultural activist, but professionally I'm an educator. People, you've been in education over 30 years. I have a doctorate in linguistics, English being the focus. Caribbean languages in particular was my is my specialty. So that what we call the so-called Creole languages, that's my specialty in the academic world. But I'm more of an activist. I've had the opportunity to serve as Minister of Culture, Sports, Youth, and Education. And the reason why that opportunity presented itself was because of the work I've been doing in all of those areas, right? So I'm a former athlete. I've been in education over 30 years. I've been a cultural activist all my life. And so together, those three and the portfolio of youth became like the perfect opportunity to be able to serve on an official capacity as, in government. So yeah, and I'm back in the sphere of academics. I now teach as assistant professor at the University of the Bahamas.
Oh, very
And
nice.
yes, it's been a year. So this is I'm going into my second year with UB. And yeah, I'm still around. I'm still involved in just about everything I was always involved with. In between, I try to work to pay bills.
You
Yeah,
try
that's
to
what.
work to pay bills. That sounds
Yeah,
like every one of us.
yeah.
That sounds like every one of us.
Yeah.
Rhoda, before let me tell you, let me warn you.
Oh,
Let me warn you. These gaffs are
yeah.
so intriguing. They're so captivating. We won't even realize when an hour pass. So let's just dive right into it. All right. And
Okay.
what we also do is we engage with our viewers. So right
Mm-hmm.
now, our viewers will comment, they will ask questions. And for viewers, we encourage you every single week to be a part of this GAF. It's not just Rhoda and I, it's all of us collectively, all right? This platform is created for all of us to have that basic layback conversation where we're able to inspire, motivate, and allow the transformation in terms of our society and an upliftment of our lifestyles, all right, of people, all right? And it all starts with knowledge and
Yeah.
bringing that knowledge in the form of basic conversation, not to insult anyone's intellect, of course, but we need to be able to reach each other where we are, all right? So we can put all our words, our fancy words aside, and we just gap, all right? So, Rhoda,
Yeah.
without before I continue, remember to check out Gyhaffin, gyhaffin.com, subscribe to our newsletter, gyhaffin.com. Thank you so much for everyone who has been supporting us so far. That's GYHAFFIN, gyhaffin.com. Rhoda, before we continue, let's continue.
Mm-hmm.
What is culture? What is culture exactly? And what is Caribbean culture to you? After you answer what's culture, what is
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean culture to you?
Ooh, that's let me answer it in its simplest form, from a
Yes,
social scientist perspective, right? When we
sure.
think of it, in academic circles, we would say that culture is nature plus. It's that
Mm-hmm.
simple, right? So whatever it is you do to nature, because we all have access to nature wherever we are in the world, right? But whatever you do in a particular space, whatever you do in a certain area, and I'm not going to use words like tribes and I would prefer to use words like groups and space.
Mm-hmm.
That is culture. And
Mm-hmm.
usually culture, or the way you try to distinguish one from the next, is that this particular group in this space adjusts nature in this way,
Mm-hmm.
and it's identifiably different from this other group, right?
Yes.
So you look at a mango, for example. We know how to eat the mango in the Caribbean, right? And we have all
Yes.
these memes on social media about how to eat a mango, right? But some
Mm-hmm.
people cook mangoes, like they make mango chutney, they make different things. And some,
We do. We
okay,
do.
there you go.
We
You
do.
see?
We Guyanese, when they cook curry, they put mango. Not every time, but they put mango in curry.
Okay.
The
Yeah. And
green
so,
mangoes in curry. So I see here, there's a Guyanese in here. Andrea Saul. I see
yeah.
Andrea Saul. She knows. I'm sure she knows about a curry mango, a
Right.
mango curry. Yeah.
And
Go
and
ahead. Go ahead.
for some of us, that's blasphemy, right? For some
Yeah.
of us, yeah, for some of us, you don't touch it. If it came off the tree as a fruit, you're supposed to
Yeah.
eat
Yeah.
it. It's supposed to, that's
Yes.
culture. That's culture,
Yes.
right? When I studied in University of Miami years ago, my roommate was from Saudi Arabia. or, you know, she had come to us by way of Saudi Arabia, and we would go to the cafeteria, we would see mango. You know, her experience with mango is very different than my experience. And she would always cut the mango, put salt on it. And I always thought something was wrong with her.
I know that way though. I know that way. Salt, mango, salt, and pepper.
Yes,
Mango, salt, and pepper. Yeah.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, we put it in a little plate and we take, like, we put it in pieces, mango, salt, and pepper. And let me tell you, that thing is so good. It's so good.
So I've been told. Now, blasphemy for me, you know, you don't touch.
I'm coming. You and I are going to hang out and
Yes.
we're going to eat it. We're going to pick someone's mango and we're going to eat it with pepper. But it have to be the real homemade pepper.
Oh, well, there you go. You see, and I don't do pepper. I'm not a pepper person. Culturally,
You're missing.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So that is culture. Sorry, in its basic, you know, definition. And then when we think of Caribbean culture, so we put it in the context of the Caribbean, we would again so expand that, you know, what you do to nature in the space, and then you expand it to the Caribbean space, and then you look at shared history, shared experiences, and the things that are shared are the things that make it the same, right? And then you recognize that within each, you know, of those areas or those spaces, that you still have uniqueness. So you have a Caribbean culture, but you also have a St. Martin culture that's very different than a Guyanese culture, for example, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the definition of culture.
Very good. Let me Olga Mussington is here, Fiona Ross. I'm just highlighting everyone. Andrea Saul, who else is here? Roxy Simmons. She said it's good without pepper, no pepper for me also. So Roxy agrees with you.
Go.
Yeah, Roxy agrees with you. Mango and salt. Oh yeah. Okay, so we do have a few persons on. We have 38 viewers in viewership right now. So now we understand the simplest form of what culture is and what Caribbean culture is. So even though we have so many similarities, we still have our own uniqueness individually, right?
Yes, and they're identifiable by certain traits or you know, actions or behaviors that you can say that's a Guyanese, you know, or
dialect. Dialect is one of them for sure.
Yeah.
Would you agree? No?
Yeah, but you see, because I'm again, I hope we're using the same definition of the word dialect. That's another issue.
Okay, but expound, please. Expound, please.
Yes. Because in the Caribbean, how I grew up, knowing it to mean, I forgot to mention to you, I told you that I have a doctorate in linguistics, right? So in English. So in linguistics, the definition or the academic or the dictionary definition of dialect simply means a different variety of the same language, right? So Guyanese dialect, St. Martin dialect, Bahamian dialect, that's the definition. But we also know, culturally speaking, when Caribbean people say dialect, they mean the non-standard variety of the language, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The patois.
So, the patois, the Creole, whatever. But at the same time, the word dialect could mean we would not refer to the Irish as a dialect. We Caribbean people would not refer to the way Irish people speak English as dialect. But that also is dialect. So there's a certain notion too, I must say, that's built in the Caribbean definition or usage of the word dialect that makes it almost feel not inferior, but yes, in a way, in a certain way, inferior, because when it gets put in the context of school and the wider society, we know it's people look down. We accept that. But we wouldn't do that with the Irish or the Australian or whatever. The same language, but a different variety. But we would not thumb our nose at Australian or Irish. Yeah. So
I agree with that. Okay, I agree with that. Okay, so now we're in the height of COVID, all right? Because there's so much I can pick up from what you just stated about the differences and making persons feel less than they really are in terms of their presentation, the manner in which they speak. But this is not for today.
Yeah.
We're in the height of COVID.
Yes.
We have living in the Caribbean. Olga Mussington says inferior, how it comes across, but it's powerful. Shakira said, Rhoda, why is Caribbean dialect shunned away? You want to answer that? Shakira
Ye-
asked, Sharika, what am I doing with your name, girl?
uh-huh.
Rhoda, why is Caribbean dialect shunned away?
Okay, a lot of
You
it,
heard that?
again,
She's asking, why is Caribbean dialect shunned away?
yeah, it has to do with power. It has to do with prestige, notions of prestige, and it also has to do with conditioning. So there's a whole bunch of stuff happening, and it's shunned by whom, right? Who do Caribbean
Mm-hmm.
people and people in the African diaspora in general see as the standard or the prestige, right? We have been conditioned
Yeah.
to believe that Europe is the center of the universe, right?
Yes.
Um, so anything European, and you see me using the word European as opposed to white, but you can equate them if you wish. Um, but so anything on that level, we see it as superior because we've been conditioned to believe that.
Yeah.
And some of us have internalized that belief too. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you get people like in positions of policy and governments and in those areas, they come with the crazy conditioning, right? That,
Mm-hmm.
you know, oh, you got to speak proper, you know, you can't be using that bad English around here, you know, that conversation, because they don't understand, a lot of them don't understand how they got to that variety that they're speaking. They've internalized that notion that it is a broken, you ever hear the word broken English and
Of
broke up
course.
English? Well,
Of
okay.
course.
So but you hear the terminology that's used, right?
Yeah.
Broken and
Broken.
broken, broke up, etc., which means there's something wrong with it. And it
Mm-hmm.
almost, and then it comes from one of those theoretical schools in linguistics that says it was the blacks' attempt to speak the European language, and they couldn't really do it well. Mind you, they come from spaces with like 100 languages, you know, but you know, this one European language was so hard that these blacks couldn't speak it, and so they speak broken whatever, broken English,
Yeah.
broken French, whatever. So that's based on, you know, academic training. So especially our
Mm-hmm.
policy makers that have gone to those schools would have sat in those benches, and they come back now with this superiority complex, you know, because we've been trained by the
Mm-hmm.
masters and we know what's better, etc. And so
Mm-hmm.
you institute policies, and then the masses believe it too, because the masses are walking around thinking, you know, and acting and performing in the
Yeah.
circus, etc. And so it gets perpetuated, you know, it gets
Mm-hmm.
perpetuated. It's the same thing we do with our hair, we did with the noses, we do our skin color, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
We can go down the list. It's part of the
Yeah.
crazy conditioning of inferiority.
We listen, we're gonna get you back here and we'll
Yes.
talk even more on this because the comments I see Olga Mussington said, hey Olga, what's up?
Hi,
She
Olga.
said, yes. She said, yes, we were made to believe we have to be like because they are the standard. But our dialect is what makes us unique. Nothing about us is broken. Thanks, Rhoda. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Shanome Young says, loving this discourse. Sharika Higgs, American accents are also considered more intellectual than Caribbean dialects. I think if I may say this to Sharika, I think it's a conditioning also, of course, of our people because the system didn't say we're better. We shun from our culture. When a person believes they're poor. When a person believes they are poor, and therefore anything that appears to be wealthier, of more wealth than them, because they know what they are, they will feel inferior. So automatically they will believe if this sounds foreign to me, it's better than me. It's what has been conditioned. All right.
Right,
So
but you cannot disconnect it from power and prestige. So the prestige is there, but the prestige
mhm,
didn't come by let's say Africans looking at Europeans and say, "Oh, you guys are superior to us," because
mhm,
Africans know that that's not true. If you go back to the ancestral spaces, they know that's not true. But those who have the power, so whether it was military power, because that's how you
mhm,
start, right? You have to subjugate. You have to subjugate. You have to
mhm.
hold down, and then you do the conditioning. So it comes with
Yes.
military might. So and then you do the training, and then here's the crazy part, because you probably this one probably mess with some people now. When you start to do things like God does not look like you, but God looks like me, And
Ooh,
yeah. And so
that's
if
disruptive.
that's the
That is
big thing.
disruptive.
But that's the thing that made it work in the end, because if your God looks like me, then I gotta be superior to you. Come on.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. You said
yeah,
it. You said it. You
yeah.
definitely said it. Listen, Olga said we definitely have to bring you back to expound even more on this. I see Fiona, Malika Sampson is here. Geraldine Didi is here. You are so right with the
Hi,
Arundel.
Geraldine. She's in
That's
France.
oh, hey, Geraldine in France. You're so right with the Arundel. That's what many Caribbean go through in Europe. Many Caribbean persons go through in Europe.
Yeah.
I faced that while doing. I just lost it. I can only see
At the
four at
time.
a time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. For our viewers, remember, right? Today's
Mhm.
gap is the impact of COVID on
Yeah.
our culture. So we really
Uh-huh.
needed to dive in. So I'm very glad we are all very in tune. We're invigorated. Uh, After Hurricane Irma,
Yeah.
right? After every disaster, it's not just our social welfare, the well-being of our people only is disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many other aspects that we do not generally pay attention to as a people, as a common people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Here it is now, we're in the height of COVID. In what way, based on your background, Rhoda, in what way would you say our culture has been affected by COVID?
I know we're going to get to this a little later, but the biggest
Sure.
disruption in St. Martin in terms of the culture, you
Yes.
saw it yesterday. So we're gonna
Yes.
get
We're
we're gonna
gonna
get
get to that. We're
okay.
definitely gonna get to that. But it's
Yeah,
interesting because I really
yes.
want us to speak a bit more first.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we did
Yeah, yeah,
on what
yeah,
exactly culture is. For us to
yeah.
understand, us collectively to
Right.
understand what culture is, how it came about, what causes us to be inferior, and as we continue, it will go right into where we really want this conversation to
Okay.
go.
Okay.
All
So
right.
so in what way? When you look at the definition, right? So part of that definition of what you do to nature is what we call your cultural practices, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the way you cook, the way you pray,
Mm-hmm.
the way you comb your kids' hair to go to school, etc. Right? How does
Yes.
that affect you? Think of it. And I was stuck in the Bahamas when COVID hit, right? I was
Yeah.
not at home, so I was not in my cultural space, right?
Yeah.
And so we moved to lockdown. Here you are in a foreign space, so it's foreign space,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm now seeing my culture through the lens of Facebook, social
Yeah.
media, etc. So I don't have all the information, but I have some cultural values and practices, etc., that I'm aware of
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a product of the St. Martin Society, right? So I was
Yes.
conditioned in the St. Martin training. So when it first
Mm-hmm.
hit, but let's look in general before we get to the St. Martin cultural impact. In general, you're going
Mm-hmm.
to see like most of the people who are in the field of culture, who are practitioners of culture, they're usually very creative, independent, and independent minded, etc. So you'll hardly see them working for a 9 to 5 or a big one. And if they do, it's like me, they pay the bills while they work over here,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
and you notice already globally, those are going to be some of the first that are going to be impacted because,
Mm-hmm.
if there's no tourists coming and there's
Yeah.
nobody to play your art and there's no performance in the hotel and if there is
Mm-hmm.
no, for the musicians, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
economically, they're on the front line as well, right? So
Yes.
on an economic level, they will be impacted. In a
Mm-hmm.
positive way, what I saw in terms of the trend globally, which I thought was good for culture, was a lot of people had a lot of extra time now because this is the other thing about culture that I touched on it, but I didn't touch on it. I mentioned religion, but I didn't mention spirituality, right? Again, your groundings in your culture, spirituality is part of that conversation, right? So how do you worship? How do you get in connection with what's beyond your physical in the space? And
Yes.
if you're, how a lot of us were moving very fast, 9 to 5, come home, gotta put the children to work, etc. So now you have a lot of time at home. Sorry, you're in your house. family is there now. I saw a lot of people culturally going back to a lot of old practices. Did we not?
Agriculture.
Yes, agriculture was one, which was very interesting because some of us who've been, people say, "Why you always your hands always, your nails always dirty?" You always people were like, "Oh, look at my plants! I just planted a pea today. I have a, I have, I plant a little bit
But
of
I'm
onion."
proud of that, though. I am
Right?
really proud of that.
But you see the
I am.
difference now in terms of
Yeah.
prestige again, because
Yeah.
some of us who are always in the ground, they complain, "Look at your nails, look at your nails." But if you're constantly digging earth, you ain't got no time to go do. First of all, I think personally, nothing against the sisters with the manicures and stuff, but to me, it's like such a waste of resources to go spend that kind of time and money and energy. And you could do it. Looks nice on some people, but I get more joy out of digging. It makes more value. Let me put it like that. Maybe not joy, but more value. I feel more, how the word I would say, yeah, and connected. And there's a sense of satisfaction, like I did that. When you look at the yard, it was like, oh, my garden looks well. So there's that too, right? So I saw that on Facebook and social media. People were like planting up a storm, and they were like, I plant 2 peas and I plant a pumpkin, and I didn't know. And then you saw the groups where they were sharing, right?
Yeah.
They were sharing tips. And then somebody added me to the group, and I was like, okay, now I have a new community now, right?
Yeah.
A new cultural space, right? Because now we have this in common, right? So there's that. And then you saw people who went back to painting, and I have people who are sewing again, and people who didn't remember the grandmother had taught them to sew. And so you get reconnected. And I think, so how has the COVID impacted culture? In a very it has impacted me as a person very deeply, but in the end, I say for the better. So for me, it was a blessing, right? And I could speak to that as well. But what I saw globally, in addition to the death and the destruction, and then George Floyd was in the air. So all of this, because I don't think, had COVID not come, right? Had COVID not shown up, George Floyd death might have been just another police kills on a Black man, etc. You know how that is. But now you're forced to be at home. You're forced to be in the house.
We had time.
You had time, and all you have is this television or social media, whatever. So it's feeding your brain a different set of information, and now you have time to process. And then you start to culturally look at some of the things that you have been doing, and I see people questioning their very humanity. How could I have not noticed this about my best Black friend, or about my white friend? So again, culturally, you start to do a lot of things differently. And then in the Caribbean, the conversation said, "Oh, but we don't have racism here." Oh, really? And COVID was part of that conversation, I believe. COVID gave us time to look at ourselves, to look at our communities, to look at how we treat our elders. But why I brought up this in terms of St. Martin, when it happened, I got nervous. And I only got nervous in terms of the lockdown. When they were saying maybe 2 weeks, nobody worrying too much. 2 weeks, we can live with 2 weeks. But when they started saying that maybe 4 to 6 weeks, I got nervous for St. Martin. And I can't speak to other spaces because culturally I wasn't connected in the same way. But I started to get
spaces as in other Caribbean islands, other countries.
Other countries, because in my head, I'm wondering what is going to be the response. And this is why culture is important in this conversation, right? When you don't use your cultural values at the core of what you do, you get disconnected from yourself and your society, right? And you get more chaos, right? So if you look at the different spaces in the Caribbean, if you look at the different spaces in the world, how they reacted to just things like mask wearing, or stay at home and wash your hands, a lot of it had to do with culture. Why is it so much easier in Asia, Japan, for example, or China, to people wear masks? They get used to, and they also have a kind of cultural value that if the authorities say do it. No discussion, right? No setup. There's gonna be some pushback, but generally speaking, people behave the way they are socialized to behave, right? If you understand that, you understand culture, right? This is all about culture. If you know your culture, you know what is going to be accepted and what is not going to be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you start talking about bringing in military people
Mm-hmm.
because of the virus, it's like, this gonna get ugly. This ain't gonna go down.
Mm-hmm.
It might work in
Mm-hmm.
another space, but culturally that cannot work in certain spaces. And
Yes.
so if you're comfortable with who you are and you're aware of your cultural norms and your values, your response to things like a pandemic, culture should guide it.
Yeah.
Culture should say, no, we won't do this. We will, for example, in some other spaces, get our National Guards people who are no longer now, or our immigration officers, because we closed off, right? So our immigration officers are now jobless, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
our security guards are now jobless. Rather
Yeah.
than bring in soldiers, you say, you know what? Why
Utilize
don't
our
we
own.
use our own, and let's have a conversation of how we can train them in 2 days or whatever, and let them,
Yeah.
because we are a community that's very small, we interact with each other, we know each other, you know. How can we use those values to respond to the pandemic in a very positive way? Something as bad as a pandemic, but how do we use that to respond positively? Yeah.
And how we also utilize our own resources.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and what it shows is, it shows that we as a country, we value our people, we value the professionals that we deem to believe that they are professionals, you know.
Yeah.
And if there is a heightened need for them to look outside, I mean, I can understand, but to at least include them, your own, in the entire consideration of, right?
Mhm.
You mentioned racism. We're not going to touch base on it, but I want to mention to our viewers, I know we have a viewership throughout the region. We have persons who are here from various African countries. We have Nigeria, Zimbabwe, who's tuning right now. And even though we will be, I want our viewers to hear this, huh? Even though we will be tapping on some specifics with St. Martin, I really and truly want, even if you're in St. Kitts, you're in Antigua, you're in Guyana, you're in Trinidad, wherever you are, I really would like you to pay attention to what's happening in St. Martin, what we're about to discuss, and imagine it being, what if it happens in your own country as well? Because you mentioned this now, you said, we believe that the Caribbean doesn't have racism. Right now, for the past several weeks, Guyana is an uproar. We have deaths of two young boys of 16 and 18 years old, who were like, their bodies were
Yeah.
destroyed, like ridiculous, you know, and another young man was killed after that. So it's not just a St.
But
Martin situation. Go ahead.
But that's culture. I wanna bring that into, because you remember sitting in a St. Martin space and you're
Yeah.
trying to judge a Guyanese behavior, right? Because you don't
Yeah.
understand, you don't understand how a human being could mutilate another human being. But you know what
Yes.
people would say, yeah, the people who've bought into the stereotype, but culture informs stereotypes, right?
Yes, of
Somebody could
course.
say, so if let's say you hear of a mutilation, oh, that it's a Guyanese, oh yeah, they're accustomed to doing that. Because culturally, it has it lives in the
Yeah.
space, and in
Yes.
some places it will be unheard of, but in other places, how do you let children starve?
Yes.
Culturally, it exists, and some people close their eyes and pretend it doesn't exist
Yeah.
there too, but in some
Yeah.
spaces it wouldn't work because culturally it's not part of who you are.
You're
Choose.
right. You are right. You are right. I mention it because we definitely want to reach our wider audience. All right. I don't want persons to feel like we're only talking about St. Martin. We want to, I want viewers to comment. If you're in St. Vincent and you experience anything, we want you to comment. If you're in St. Kitts, in Antigua, wherever you are, just comment. All right. Just comment and share whatever experiences you have in terms of systematic culture, displacement, whatever it is. But to add to what you stated, Rhoda, to add to what you stated, you said a culture. In St. Martin, when you hear someone is thrown out of their home, or it's like, oh my God, you know?
Yeah.
But I can tell you, I mean, I personally left Guyana when I was 9 years old. And what I do know, it sounds horrible to say it's in the culture, but what I do know is from way back then, I would always hear a story whereby a husband will kill his wife, give them poison, and kill all the children. You
Yeah.
know, in 2016, like Guyana, no, earlier, a few years ago, Guyana became like the #1 in the hemisphere in terms of suicide rates. Like people, young people were just hanging themselves off of trees. I do know of a situation. I was there in 2016. This young man, him and his girlfriend were not working, and she became frustrated. She went out
Mhm.
looking for a job, and even though they weren't both working and their frustration in the home, he was against her going out to work. So she got a job in the little security booth by a police station. And one
Mhm.
day in broad daylight, he went there and he chopped her neck off right there. And it was just hanging by a string, you know?
Wow.
So these things I do know, you know, it's horrific to even think of it. But I do know when I lived there, and even after, you would hear these stories of people poisoning the husband would poison the wife and the children and then kill himself. It's just things that I grew up knowing, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But on the
Young says,
okay,
mm-hmm.
no, on the
Go
positive
ahead.
side of that, in terms of response, and I was thinking of space, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you, I don't know if you saw this, but I saw this from in the Bahamas when
Mm-hmm.
they were talking about giving relief to people who couldn't go fend for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Which is another thing. Some societies chose to let people go fend for themselves
Mm-hmm.
because they know that they will manage. And then some
Mm-hmm.
societies chose to lock you up and say, well, we're going to bring you bag and noodles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which is a weird thing in the Caribbean. Think of the Caribbean, that we're
Yeah.
not a custom of, but we in St. Martin we've become that also, right? And
Yes.
but when I looked at some spaces, and then I'm thinking of Dominica in particular right now, I
Mm-hmm.
remember there was a thing saying that this is the relief package from Dominica, with Dominica's culture at the core, with all the
Mm-hmm.
provisions, all the food
When
and
was this?
this was COVID. This was during
COVID.
COVID. Yes.
Okay.
And so the Dominica relief package looked
Mm.
like a Dominican environment
Dominica. I
with
love that.
Dominica's. You understand?
Yay. I love that.
So I'm
So
saying when you think of
identity,
your culture,
cultural identity.
yeah. And how do you react to something? Yeah, yes, it's unknown, but if you live in Cuba, everything is unknown,
Mhm.
right? If you
Yes.
see when you're in Cuba and you see how people, oh, what a pandemic, okay, we good. There's a sense of adjustment. We'll figure it out. We'll survive. People die there like everywhere else, but also
Mhm.
more people survive because of their resilience, their culture. We got this on our own. We're not gonna look for a bag of rice to come to us
Yeah.
on a boat, with some soldiers, etc. We're
Mm-hmm.
accustomed to taking care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's dive into it.
Hmm.
What is happening in St. Martin right now in terms of our culture? Or for persons who do not know, let me say this. For persons who do not know, our viewers, St. Martin is the smallest territory in the world that is divided into two separate countries. 16 square miles is Dutch, 21 square miles is French. One little island, two different countries. When you enter the French side, you can feel you're in a totally different territory. When you enter the Dutch side, you're in a totally different territory. One foot can be on the French side and the other one could be on the Dutch side. But everyone lives like family. Everyone is family. There are persons who lives on the French side and work on the Dutch side and vice versa. There are persons who live on the Dutch side and go to school on the French side. All right. So everyone is one. So regardless of the fact that there are different countries on one little tiny island, 37 square mile island, we're all one. Now, Rhoda,
Hmm.
what is happening right now? I want you to let us know what is happening right now and then give us a bit of a history. And again, for our viewers, even if you are not in St. Martin, we definitely would like you to pay attention to this because this is not just a St. Martin situation. This is our situation. All right. Whatever is happening here, it can also happen anywhere in a different form, in a different way. And what we want is to be able to recognize it when we see it, even if it's subliminal.
Yeah.
Even when it's subliminal, We must be able to recognize it. And having conversations like these actually spark the mind and open our eyes to see beyond what our naked eyes cannot see, just like that. And this is why we're having this conversation. Rhoda?
Wow. No, you sure you have time for this? Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
ready. Viewers, do you
Okay.
have time for this?
All
Do you have
right.
time for this?
All right, we're gonna do the slow school version of it, okay? And so you
Okay.
cut out a lot of it. But here's
Okay.
some. You mentioned a word subliminal, and I want to
Mhm.
use it based on that, right? And you also said two things. You also said another thing, that you came to St. Martin when you were 9. I'm gonna
Nice.
try to judge your age. I know you as a young
I'm
woman here.
35.
Okay, so I was gonna judge your age, 20 something years ago, and it makes sense that you would use the terminology that you use that I wouldn't use,
Yes.
because again, culture, right?
Yes.
Subliminally, language, you're speaking to the linguist now, language is one of the most important cultural value that
Mm-hmm.
also indicates where you are, whether you're shifting more towards embracing or away from, and
Mm-hmm.
whether you are now holding on to notions that were given to you
Mm-hmm.
and diluting. Maybe some people say diluting. I like to see it as evolution. It doesn't always
Okay.
have to be positive, but it's still
Mm-hmm.
evolution of
Mm-hmm.
what your cultural identity is, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
know identity is dynamic, it's evolving, it always changes,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
here's the challenge. To refer to St. Martin as two different countries already a problem. Problematic, problematic. And so the word country, we won't play with that right now, but just the
Mm-hmm.
mere fact of the 37 square miles,
Mm-hmm.
growing up as a St. Martin, culturally speaking,
Mm-hmm.
we never had that conversation. It's foreign, and it's new. It's not foreign. It's new to me for
Mm-hmm.
people to speak about French side and Dutch side. That's a new
Mm-hmm.
thing. That's in the last
Yeah.
20 years, maybe the last 30 years. And it was done usually for promotion of tourism and other.
Mm-hmm. It's a marketing strategy.
Part of
Marketing.
it is marketing. Marketing was the excuse that we use, but it's also something
Mm.
more sinister about the division, trying to make
Okay.
the division real, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to, oh, it's just on paper, nobody don't pay attention to that thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing, the division was because of the history, because of what some of us refer to as benign neglect, because St. Martin was not important to anybody for a very long time, for a very long time. So we were neglected, because the big
Mm-hmm.
centers for the Dutch and the French in the Caribbean were Willemstad in Curacao,
Mm-hmm.
and Bastia and Guadeloupe, right? Those were the center of Europe for French and Dutch. And so the
Mm-hmm.
focus went there, the development went there, and everything went there. And so, like other Caribbean spaces, St. Martin was left to fend for itself. And what did St. Martin do over the years? The people in the community, the people in government, they created this thing. They went out into, we'll go after the American tourist market. That was the thing, because that's where money is. Canadians and
Yeah.
Americans, because Europeans don't really
Yeah.
spend, according to this period and what people are thinking,
Mm-hmm.
right? They come and they vacation, but they don't really spend those. The American dollar, the great American dollar, was what people were after. But it's also, St. Martin historically has a relationship with the United States and the region, because
Mm-hmm.
St. Martiners who were able to, make it or improve would traditionally send their children to the United States for
Yeah.
further education. Whereas in Curacao, for example, the trend would have been more Europe,
Yeah.
and in Guadeloupe it would have been more Europe. St. Martin would have been Trinidad, Cuba, this region, and the United States, the Virgin Islands. So
Yeah.
St. Martiners would have gone traditionally to Trinidad, to the US Virgin Islands, to the Latin-speaking world, the Dominican Republic in particular, and
Mm-hmm.
and Cuba, Panama, and also the United States. So
Mm-hmm.
there's that history and that relationship with the English-speaking world and the
Mm-hmm.
Spanish speaking world. Okay, that's our
Mm-hmm.
history. So when we were growing up, if you wanted to go to Marigot, you went to Marigot. Nobody said we're going to the French side. We never said that. Or if you were going to what we call town, a town in St. Martin English, it was Great Bay. Very few people said Phillipsburg. Very few people did. And it would mostly be what we would say educated people, right? Because that's where the conditioning is happening also. It's in this academic space, in this very professional space, that this conditioning is taking place. So for our viewers, we would have said 37 square mile island, 2 administrations, right? France and the Netherlands. We wouldn't focus on Dutch and French. 2 administration, 1 Dutch, 1 French. That would have been one. And in terms of language, so that's how we see it. So our families not just live and work, but our families, our blood, our saliva, our DNA is interwoven with not just the 2 sides of the island. We have a very strong historical connection to Anguilla, to St. Croix, to St. Thomas, St. Martin, because why? Traditionally, the slaves that would have worked on a plantation in St. Martin would have been owned by the same plantation owner who had a plantation in St. Croix or in St. Thomas. And so they would move the slaves from one plantation, or so there was this happening. So there's family throughout and in these islands, but also, you know, the wider Caribbean. So it would have been strange to us as St. Martiners to identify with Dutch or French first. That's a thing in a passport. In the last 20 to 30 years, you're hearing more of that, you know, more importation of foreign expertise. But what changed this would have been 1963. Our culture, the culture would have changed substantially in 1963 with the airport. Now we're going to cater to tourists in the 70s. By the 1980s, when I was in high school, it was like, you know, tourism was up. Everybody participated. You know, there's this one hotel that almost everyone had a family member working at. And so the change now, you know, American influences are becoming more dominant. And then suddenly St. Martin looks like, from Europe now, from the position of the European, it's like, what's going on down there? That's ours. That's ours. We need to keep that.
Have to claim it.
We need to, you know, that. And so the narratives, and I'm not saying that we have all pristine politicians, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But here comes the narrative of corruption on the world, on the world. First they tried the drug narrative. St. Martin was a drug haven. You know, everybody down there's gonna die because the drug is killing off and the people are using. And so that didn't work. They tried, the foreign people are coming in. We have these at-risk countries. Guyana and Jamaica were the 2 biggest criminals.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it still is.
Yes. Yeah. But that didn't work. So all kinds of reason to try to make the division more official. And then there was a discussion about physical borders. And that's where it started to get a little dangerous over the years. I'm not talking about the yesterday thing. I'm talking about generations. And so you had people whose grandmother was in it. Then now they're in it. And now, because St. Martin people have been resisting this attempt to divide for years, for centuries. You know, they've been one, but the little rock was cut up like most of the African continent. You know, this for this one and this for that one. And just like they did in Africa. And then you have all these ethnic groups that are so criminal and so dangerous, and they're killing off each other, and you know the Europeans are going to save them from killing each other, etc. So you create that narrative in St. Martin that you created in the rest of especially the non-independent spaces, you know, and here we are today having that same conversation.
What conversation we're having today? Because yesterday there was a march.
Yes.
Right. Tell us about the march, and then march, standoff. Tell us about that, and then explain to us why and how it came about, what caused it.
Okay. Let's back up on the march, and I'm bringing back culture in this because culture is our
of course.
Back and again. Terminology, why terminology is important. A few years ago, this is before the march, when this is 30 years ago, 1990.
Demonstration.
Yes, right. So you know about this stuff, right? 1990. This is exactly
demonstrations.
30 years ago today. There was this thing again, who gets to eat and who doesn't get to eat, and and then that one but so the cultural worker though, when the politicians and the policy makers are behaving in this manner, I don't know if you know, the cultural worker doesn't behave the same way. The cultural worker is a people's person. The cultural worker is the person whose ear is on the ground, who can tell you, listen, in that barrio that you think that's not the truth. In there, this and this is what's really happening in there. Or, so a lot of the times we dismiss the cultural practitioner. Oh, I go with a little cultural thing, come do a little walk up here for a show, Usually that's how the cultural worker is treated. But the cultural practitioner, the cultural worker is that person who has his ear or her ear to the ground and is paying attention to what is happening, and sometimes see a lot of the danger before the politician does. What's his name? George Lamming says, the Caribbean is already united. It is the politicians who don't know it, right? It is the politicians who don't know it. And so Lassana Sekou, our what some of us call our poet laureate, Lassana, coming back home from studying abroad, living abroad for a while, kind of got together a group of us and said, you know what? This thing of trying to divide us as a people is starting to get a little tricky, because we know it's wrong, but you don't always have the tools to be able to articulate, what's happening, right? If you're not trained, if you're not an academic, because the man on the street, ain't no discussion for the man on the street. He knows. He may not be able to put it in a fancy document for tourism, but he knows what he's dealing with. And so they got together a group of people. It was called the Informational Committee on National Symbols, ICON, right? And say we need a symbol that our people can rally around to keep our unity. Because when you start talking about French and Dutch flag and French flag and Dutch passport and French passport and Dutch this and French this, and those people on the French side and those French people and those Dutch people, you start to create a wedge between the people, which you're starting to hear now. If you're paying attention, you hear people are saying, oh, they're on the French side and they're on the Dutch side. It's a whole different conversation, but a cultural worker is usually that person who's aware of it and is saying, this is how we deal with it. And so out of that conversation of what can we give our people to, culturally speaking, like for example, when Usain Bolt beats everybody in the Olympic, the whole Caribbean is Jamaican all of a sudden, right? All of us, when Soca Warriors won and world, we were like, oh, we from Trinidad, when the Bahamians win in the Olympics, all of us, we're all Bahamians, right? So while we may recognize that we do have our differences, we also recognize we need our symbols on, to rally around. So Usain Bolt belongs to all of us. Bob Marley is ours, Some of us don't even speak Spanish, but Juan Luis Guerra is ours, right? So we recognize that and we claim it. And then came this thing, which you saw everywhere yesterday, right?
Yes, the flag, yeah.
The idea of a unity flag or a national flag or a symbol that represents all of the history and the cultural values of the St. Martin people. So there was this conversation, our history, our cultural values are in every symbol of this thing. And you saw yesterday how this suddenly replaced everything else.
Exactly. We saw nothing else.
Right. But why did it? Because we are no longer buying the narrative. When you use the pandemic, so now for our audience who's not familiar with what led to yesterday, when the pandemic struck, so one of the first response was, oh, lock up, lock up, lock up, lock up, and eat sardines and biscuit or something. I can't remember the exact story, right? Military people are coming to help you from Europe. They're coming from Europe and they're going to help you. So at some point, you know it's uneasy, it's not right, but you know, your cultural values, so your people are in general unobedient people. They don't always like the rules, so they resist. And so you could get a little juve, a so-called juve in the middle of a pandemic. That's all part of the narrative. I don't see nothing wrong with it. It's part of the resistance. Because it's not that the idea of masks are not healthy to, but when you say lock up, lock up, lock up, and it's against everything that I'm trained and socialized to be,
Yeah,
and you just cancel the carnival. Don't forget it.
yeah, yeah. It's like a caged dog. The moment you
Right.
open that gate, that cage, he goes crazy. But I won't
It-
lie, I won't lie. The Juve, the Juve was an entertainment to me.
Listen, I didn't even know I was invited. It's when the day after I saw I got invitations. I was the bombers. I was like, I missed a good Juve, you know.
Oh my
So
God. Let me see. Olga Mussington said, this is when you were talking about the ground workers. She said, and then they in turn become community activists and organizers and grassroots.
yes,
Yeah, Aishira, I always forget Aishira's name when I'm on here, but I just remember it. Aishira, she mentioned Mullet Bay as the one of the areas on St. Martin what became very attracting for tourists, right?
mm-hmm.
For our viewers, again, let me just remind you to check out gaffing.com, gaffing with Keoma. So this gaffing, GYHAFFIN. Just input your email address and that's it. Subscribe. And when you get it in your inbox, confirm it. That's just to keep in contact with us. Sign up to our newsletter. We will definitely appreciate it. Bismarck Agency, my partner, thank you so much for being a part of the team and supporting. Rhoda, continue. So,
Yes.
what
So
we
yeah,
saw
so
yesterday.
yeah, so you have all of this happening. So the bigger powers, the European powers, don't forget I told you they've tried everything else. There was a time, I have to say this in because you said to your viewers, pay attention, it may be
Yes.
relevant to you. There was a campaign that came out. So let me go back culturally, yeah. Things like Zwarte Piet, people try to
Mhm.
capitalize on that. Oh, it's part of the Dutch Cup. We in St. Martin, we cut it out. No, that's not gonna happen here. So there were activists fighting, intentionally fighting, culturally knowing that that does not fit here. So there was that. But then there was this other campaign that came up a few years afterwards when the whole tourism thing, and it depends too on culturally who you hire to do what. Because if the people don't relate to your culture, they come up with these crazy things. And one of the things that came
Yes.
up was one of the slogans that came up was fantastically French and delightfully Dutch. And that was supposed to be the marketing tool for St. Martin as a country. So they're going to market it jointly, but again, the
Yeah.
marketing was French and Dutch and had
Yeah.
very little to
Not
do.
just one island.
Yes, it was fantastically French and delightfully Dutch, or some nonsense like that. And so we protested against that and got rid of that too. And that disappeared very quickly. And then somebody said charismatically Caribbean, and that was a thing for a while. But with all of those conversations that I mentioned, so there was a thing called a Franco-Dutch treaty that they were going to come with to try to replace the one that nobody seems to figure out right now, the petition treaty. That's another program, Keoma. But
You're gonna come back. You
yeah,
definitely will be back
that,
here.
but when they couldn't figure out how to lock it in, they tried the Franco-Dutch treaty, and so you had to protest against that because it was going to make sure that Europe was going to unite, and the European Union is being formed, and these people are going to be more one. And since St. Martin is Europe, St. Martin was going to make sure that you had this Franco-Dutch treaty that's going to keep these French and these Dutch people together, and these people, these at-risk people like the Guyanese and the Jamaicans and these really bad Caribbean people, you're going to keep them out, because you're going to put all these things. So the whole conversation about visas and all that, that's a later thing. That's recent, And so because we don't know, some of us will go like, good idea. Okay, we were going to talk about a little kind of xenophobic stuff. But people start to buy into that. And then you see the wedge going. And every time the wedge moves a little, the Europe gets to you know, the shoehorn that you would put in to make the shoe fit. Yeah, let's put in.
Yeah.
And then
Expand
Irma
me
came,
more.
right? And Irma came, and the whole madness of putting containers was the very first time we'd ever
Yeah.
seen anything like that on the history of this island. So that was the first madness. People
So
made their
Olga
Mhm.
Mussington said, I was waiting on you to bring up the Franco-Dutch Treaty. There is Terry Veronica Gum. She said, hello, Rhoda from Aruba. Olga
Yes.
said, keep Caribbean people out and then push us out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing, because Europe was becoming one in this thing, and you're going
Yeah.
to again, but that's only because St. Martin started to look attractive. Don't forget, it was nobody was paying attention to it in the beginning, but you know, you have, you know, it's a now a piece of gold, or it's time to be, but there's also strategic military positioning, and there's all this going on, right? So they use the hurricane as an opportunity, and they tested the grounds. We put a container, yeah, people make noise, but nobody really did anything. Think of it. Nobody really did anything. People made noise. There was a little burning here and a burn. And then pay attention to how COVID is going to make this thing get a sandy ground happen in what, November 2019, the whole sandy ground thing. Because now it was bad enough that you're going to put the container and separate. But what you start to do now is you start to say, oh, people can't live on the beach properties now because it's so dangerous. People who've lived here for generations, it's so dangerous, you know. We have to move you from the beach and move you inland. And so now you're going to dispossess people of land. That's already the second strike. Because now it's, you know, they've been here, they've been fending for themselves, they've been doing what they need to do, and now you're coming in and you're taking land away and prime real estate, and you're telling people we're doing it in your interest. It's always in your interest. Whenever they come with a narrative, it's in your interest. It's never in their interest, because they never really want anything really, right? And so that happened. So you had the unease that is already building. You have the burning that you saw in the streets, and the youngsters that are, and just like war anywhere else, because this is war now. If you look at Palestine, if you look at South Africa, if you look at Yemen, if you look at Syria, if you look at Iraq, look at anywhere in the world where this is happening, where you have rock.
So Nicole DeWeaver said, Rhoda, you are dropping so much gems and speaking so much truth. Don't forget what you're saying. She also added, tactic is to cause unrest. Olga said, reclaiming land for them strategy. And why am I forgetting your name? Alshida. Aishida. She said, don't forget the exercise in Statia. Both sides being trying us. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and so because the old people say, if you give him a finger, he take a hand, right?
Yeah.
So you have to try, and so you have this thing coming in now gradually, and you're saying, okay, the other thing that happened, you have to. This is really important, and some people don't see the bigger picture. Prior to Irma, but really right after Irma, what we started to see was the military loves you. The Dutch military loves you.
Aishida said, and every time they come with help, they go with our autonomy.
Right. So they come, but before that, they start to do hurricane. So now you're getting military people from the military in the Netherlands is going to teach you how to live in a hurricane. You who have lived here all your generations, now they're going to train you how to respond to a hurricane. I saw one of the craziest thing, you know, this dude, you know, studied in the Netherlands, is teaching the elder how to put nails in the roof after the hurricane, because it's part of the Red Cross relief program. And, you know, some of the craziness, but the people are supposed to fall for it because your savior is here. Your savior is here. And so what happened? You go to the schools, same cultural values. You go to the schools and you visit the schools and you put the children on your lap and you take pictures, you know, because these are your friendly. And why exactly when that is happening, look what is happening. The boys in the neighborhood are the problem. Now, these are your soldiers. These are your defenders, your protectors. So what do you have? You lock them up because they're looting and they're riding the bike without a helmet, and And you know, they're doing all these crazy things. They're stealing cars, and some of them do. Some of them do some of the crazy stuff. But what you do is you start to pick them up quickly and you put them away. And so women and children are left defenseless. And guess what? The soldiers are here to help you. And we brought you the Red Cross, and we brought you food, and we brought you money, and we brought you money that you
our Jesus Christ.
Yes, yes. And Jesus Christ was part of the conversation too, but he was busy somewhere else. And so everything comes in now, and then COVID hits. Because remember, COVID is 3 years after Irma, and people still don't have roofs. Because the money, this miraculous pot of money is supposed to show up, and then on the other side of the island, you know, you're supposed to get this free money from the state, and it's taking care of you. So you don't have to worry to go to work because we got you. The most bankrupt country in Europe is giving you free assistance. Think about that. The most bankrupt country in Europe, practically the most, because I think Greece and some of the other countries are a little worse off. But one of the most bankrupt countries in Europe is your salvation. But you're supposed to, and they build, and this is where the artists are coming in. The artists have been speaking about this, they've been writing about this, they've been dancing about this, and so when they start to move you into so-called apartment complex, they push you on a reservation called apartment complex. Lasana has a very interesting poem about what happened in the whole French Quarter area basin there, where you push people back and put them in these structures, all living on each other like animals, because you've taken away the land because you had zoning. A very rare commodity is land, but you have zoning now.
Yeah.
And this
when you say zoning, it reminds me of the restaurant in Oyster Bay. What is it?
Captain Oliver's.
Captain Oliver's.
Yeah.
That was
it's still
crazy.
A story. It's still a story.
It's still a story. Yeah.
But you hear this thing called reserve naturel. So we're going to reserve land because, you know, you have to take care of the environment, which we do, but you put humans to live in concrete structures on each other like animals. And we reserve spaces for the animals to live freely. And so what you get is a people that is starting to boil. It's building. It has to build. It has to build. It's the natural reaction. And in 3 years, a pandemic hits. Now you're telling them to stay home. Both sides, stay locked up, eat your sardines and your crackers, and we're going to close the border to take care of you. And it starts to build. And the artist is writing about it. The writer is saying something. The Calypsonians are singing. But people, the policymakers are not listening. And then COVID hits. And they tried a smaller version of it the first time. Close the borders. So now you're cutting you off from your subsistence. Okay, let's pretend it's global. Everybody's doing it. We should do it too. Why not? And so the masses go along with this because it sounds reasonable. It always sounds reasonable to a certain extent. Do you understand?
Let me read a comment. So John Wall said, you know what is amazing? How fast you all can talk bad about Holland, but most of you went there to be educated and spend most of your time there. And when you reach back to Martin, you want to talk bad about them. So Aishida said, so because you went to school there, you can't criticize.
You have nothing. But first of all, let me help Mr. John Wall. Tell him, thankfully, I didn't go there to go to school. That's number one. As if that's important. Because the Dutch, in the Dutch kingdom, speak badly of the Dutch enterprise called the kingdom, and it's something called freedom of speech. Very well respected in the Dutch kingdom. But it has nothing to do with talking bad about Holland. And this is the other thing about this thing that I'm talking about, Keoma. It starts to touch nerves. Because when you call it out now, rather than acknowledge, as in some other places that are a lot more advanced, and I say advanced very loosely, that are a lot more receptive to say, let's rethink, let's look at what we have done as a people to other peoples, and let's try to atone for our bad behavior. Let's call it that. Some can't get there because when you call it out, they feel as if it is saying something about them personally. It's the same thing I said earlier about COVID and the US and George Floyd. Had COVID not happened, the conversation about the disparities and the inequities around the world, and not just people of African descent, but people in general, the conversation would have been a different conversation had it not happened during a time of COVID. Because you have people now that are legitimately looking at themselves, introspection, and saying, hold up, maybe I didn't see it properly before. Or maybe if my sister is telling me this, maybe I should shut up and let her speak. You see, the John Walshes of the world, they cannot permit themselves, because to them, it looks as if you're attacking them personally, because now they themselves now have to go question their own behavior and maybe question a relationship. I had a friend who, two good friends, they worked each other in a company, they grew up together professionally, etc. And now something like this is making them question their friendship. Because you think you knew my pain, or you think you knew what should be my pain. And so I must shut up or don't say anything. I can't call you out. See, the John Walshes of the world, not the ones I'm interested in talking to. I'm interested in talking to your friends and your family who want to hear this conversation, who want to say, let us look at how we are moving forward as a people, using our cultural values at the core. And the question is, what is our cultural value in this day and age with all of what we just talked about, right? Because whose culture are we going to promote when we talk about moving forward collectively in the space that has this history? See, the John Walshes of the world are accustomed to being the prestige. And what happens, some of them, a good friend of mine said to me recently, some of them are afraid that, you know, the way we treated Blacks and Caribbean people, that maybe if they were at top, they would do the same to us.
That's deep.
That's scary to some people.
Repeat that for me, please. Repeat that for us. Repeat that for us.
Some of the John Walshes of the world are afraid, and this is, I'm saying this, a white person said this to me, that if
a white person said,
when I said a white person, a person whose white ancestry lived in this tribe, but originally from out of this space, that they're afraid that if Black people had an opportunity, or Caribbean people had an opportunity to revert, that we may behave and treat them in the same way that they have treated us, you know, less than human. Because somewhere only Holland could be right for the John Walshes. So only the way the Dutch or the French would do something, that's the only way to do it. Because Europe is supreme, we know this. We all know this, that Europe is supreme. Europe is the center of the universe. So how dare you question the way they say to do it when this is the way to do it? And your cultural values would never permit you to do that, because you're a different beast. You're a different animal. Your spirituality is different, even though you were conditioned in another way. When you go back to who you are as a people, your core values will never permit you to colonize, to kill another people. It wouldn't. That's not who you are. And you remember we just talked about Guyana, who you know, when some people would hear it and say, oh my God, because, you know, that's a common practice there. In this space, if it had happened, and when it did happen, something like that similar, we all, what did the community say? Oh, you got to be a foreigner, etc., etc., etc. You know? And if it did happen by a so-called local, it would be so shocking that he would be ostracized. He would be ostracized from the community, because that's not who we are as a people culturally.
I agree. I have goosebumps. I definitely agree with that. We are
so
not
to the John Walshes of the world, they need to the John Walls of the world, they need to put the mirror up and spend some more time and really listen. Shut up, stop talking, put a napkin not in your ear, take it out and put it in your mouth and listen and try to hear what is being said, and maybe you will understand, because you can't tell me what my pain should be. If I'm hurting you, Keoma, I don't get the right to tell you how you should grieve or how you should react to my pain. I should listen. And if I want to empathize, I will listen to you to try to understand why you're hurt. If I'm sincere,
Yes.
obviously, if
Yeah.
I'm not sincere, I couldn't care less.
Yes. Yeah. It's not surface. It's
Yeah.
beyond surface.
and
It's
and and
beyond
and,
surface.
and not owning it is one of the biggest things culturally that stops societies from moving forward, because
Yeah.
hurt and pain needs recognition, sometimes, truth and reconciliation, but also the apology that hasn't come yet, that will never come from the Dutch state. I hope I'm wrong, but have just can't apologize, just can't even do the decent human thing to apologize and then say, can you please forgive me so we can move on. Yes.
Okay. I think I need a break here. Jesus Lord.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen, I am so zoned in, and our viewers are so zoned in. And John Wall responded saying, to Aishira, when you're ready to jump on the government back, like we all just jump on Holland back, let me know. I know before the whole pandemic, we complained straight about our own. Before you ride the Dutchman back, remember to ride your own people back. Okay, let me explain
Let
this.
me let me answer for Aishira. Let
Okay,
me answer for
just now,
Aishira.
just now. Let me just say this. Let me just say this. Let's just maintain some kind of quorum here. Let me just say this. This here, we're having a candid conversation, all right?
Yeah.
A candid gap, all right? This is not to disrespect anyone. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions, their own beliefs. Whoever we are, we're entitled to our own beliefs, our own opinions, and no one can take that away from us, all right? This is not to personally attack anyone, but we have our own truths, and we live by whatever we believe, all right? So this is not personal. This is not personal. So we're engaging in the comments, all right? So Olga said people don't like this man be the distraction. Yeah.
That's what I was going to.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Right.
Okay, so I just want to mention that this is not where we come and we curse or we argue or we disrespect anyone. Whatever we believe is our truth, is what we gaff about. All right. So whoever, I mean, there always will be differences, and that's what makes us unique. We are not the same, and that is fine. All right. So if we want to share our own personal views, that is fine too. But we will not attack. We will not have personal attacks. Sharing views is fine. You're going to say something, share it.
What I wanted to say is this. This is a typical kind of behavior when we start to deal with something that we need to deal with. You always get these
it's uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable. But that's why you gotta have it. That's why you gotta have the conversation.
Because it breaks barriers.
Right.
In order for us to move from where we are, we need to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We need to be able to be placed in an uncomfortable situation. Until then, it cannot. Until we look at it, in the eyes and we confront it. Because it's one thing, I learned in school and in history, the Christopher Columbus came and Arabics and Carib, but he didn't discover nobody. They were already there. People were already living there. We St. Martiners have been here. You know what I mean?
But you know what?
The other part of that. People think, oh, she from here.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. But here's the thing. The other part of that conversation with the Christopher Columbus story, don't matter how many times you tell the lie, it doesn't make it truth. Christopher Columbus had nothing to do with St. Martin's history and discovery at all. There is no record of it anywhere. And when the data that we do have puts him somewhere else at the time he's supposed to be here. So he's not even part of the conversation. But what do? We repeat it, we write it, we put it in a tourist brochure, and then our people start to internalize it. And now it's difficult now to correct the false narrative, because, and this is why I'm going back to that conversation. When people hear you start to deal with whatever truth it is of the tendency is to try to distract you, because you may have to go change some stuff about what you were saying before. You may have to go adjust history a little bit, but you see what's happening now globally because again of the pandemic. Because the pandemic, and to me it's a pandemic, yes, in the definition that it is, but I think it is more of a spiritual awakening to the world. I see it as that,
As a cleansing, I do.
Yes.
cleansing not just our physical bodies, but a conditioning of our
Right.
mind. I
Yes.
see the conditioning of our minds really have to change. And the
Yes.
fact that we were able to be shut in for so long, there were people who were distraught by being shut in. I was begging
Mhm.
for 2 more months. I needed 2 more months. I swear to God,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanted two
Yeah.
more months of lockdown
Mhm.
so I can use that time to really, reconnect with myself. And
Yeah.
I can only imagine, but I look at the pandemic as a blessing. Of course, not in all its aspects, not in all its form, right? Because
Uh-huh.
there are rippling effects. They are rippling effects as everything.
Yeah.
They're good and they're bad. It impacts
Yes.
us in various ways. But
Mhm.
for what it is, what I keep saying, we need to identify where our powers are. And
Mhm.
wherever our powers are, is where we
Mhm.
focus our attention. We
Yeah.
cannot focus our attention on where our powers, where we do not have power.
Mhm.
Wherever our powers are, we utilize that power to the best of our ability and we make the
Mhm.
most out of it. So during the
Mhm.
lockdown and for COVID, I made the most out of it. All right.
Yes.
So for viewers, check out gaffing.com. Bismarck Agency just keeps reminding me, check out gaffing.com, sign up, let us know what your email address is. And when you sign up your email address, pay attention to your email because we need you to confirm your subscription. All right. So thank you so much. Check in the comment section. You will see gaffing.com, GYHAFFIN. So again, we will carry on.
Yeah, so going back to so now we're getting to the situation yesterday, because this is,
Yeah.
if you're a cultural practitioner, as I said, you're paying attention to the signs and
Yeah.
the symbols. You're paying attention. And while the policymakers are busy running around trying to make money and bring tourists and
Yeah.
and throw down government and break up government and come back together. And this is where John would probably agree. We all will criticize our leaders, because again,
Mhm.
too, they have to give account, right?
Yeah.
But at
Of
the same
course.
time, all of this is happening, but a cultural worker has been consistently paying attention to. So the cultural worker is really the heartbeat of the society. That's who the cultural worker is, the heart of the society, the one that understands what the society is feeling, what the
Mhm.
society is thinking, what the society, and the kinds of new song. I can't wait for the calypsos next year, because I
Woo! They're gonna be
I
hot.
can I can only imagine what kind of calypsos next year are going to come. I know people are probably already writing, and
Mhm.
preparing, because the carnival next year ain't gonna be like any other carnival. For whatever
No.
reason, ain't going to be, right? Just like
Mhm.
school is not going to be, and our banking is not going to be,
Yeah.
etc. So we are now moving into this new space, and the coronavirus or the pandemic or whatever it is you want to call it has given us an opportunity. It was leading up to that, to say, hold on. Now, how you respond to it is going to determine also how you move forward.
Mhm.
If you respond to the people telling you there are united people, they've been telling you that.
Mhm.
You tried this, they told you, listen, you're overdoing it. They come
Mhm.
again. They come again. I have a friend that once used this analogy, and I thought it was so brilliant. He said when a dog is lying down somewhere, maybe he's lying down, we say on a nail, and it's choking him on his side, and he's just lying down there. For a while, he may move a little because it's uncomfortable, right? There's a little discomfort. He said, but at some point, he's going to get up and he's going to be the dog that he is. Because by
Mhm.
nature, this is who he is, right?
Mhm.
St. Martin people are a loving people in terms of our cultural values now, because a lot of people don't understand it. The name The Friendly Island was not something that we gave to ourselves. It was our visitors who came and saw the hospitality of the St. Martin people that gave us that name.
Yeah.
They went back, and that was where the Friendly Island came from, was the
Mhm.
visitors who came in, and they said, my goodness, everywhere in the Caribbean is friendly, but Aston Martin brand is a different brand, right? This is really where it came from. It is a different brand, because from very early settlement, the St. Martin people have been a very accommodating, a very embracing, a very cooperative, that's who we are as a people in terms of our cultural value. Oh, Shifa, when we were growing up, this whole conversation these days about homophobia and all that, I know the anti-man down the road, or everybody knew who was the so-called, but nobody cared. Even
Yeah.
sexual preference was dealt with differently than it is now.
Mhm. Yeah.
You grew up with it. You grew up with an Obia woman right next to the church
Mhm.
woman, and the anti man, and the man who got like
It was
100.
what it was. It was what
what
it
it
was.
was.
It was our norm.
And
It
but it was
was, yes.
it was always accommodating and non-judgmental. This is important. This is really important. The St. Martin Society that I grew up with, and my father grew up with, that and all of the elders St. Martin's gonna tell you, but that ain't business. You paid attention. If you did, you talk about it maybe in church or you know in your little small, but you didn't make it your business to interfere in somebody else's life, or you didn't you accepted all. Right? That's who we are as a people. When you start to do this French Dutch thing, and then now, what you're supposed to do now, here's the crazy part. The Dutch St. Martin, who's now different from the French St. Martin, is now not supposed to align with his brother in Marigot. He's supposed to align with the Arubians and the Curacilians and the Sabon. Why? Because of the same Dutch colonial structure, not because they had something in common, like with Anguilla, for example, like I was telling you. They have now a colonial history of a kingdom and a passport. So now you're forcing these entities that are not natural to be together. It's not a natural being together. That's why the Antilles didn't work. That's why every time they come, they switch. They put the 3 islands together. You get an SSS, and then they do. But every time they fix it around, it's to serve the interests of the metropole. It's never about your values and who you are as a people and how do we work with you to get what we want, but respecting your cultural values. Had that been the response, we wouldn't have that demonstration yesterday. It wouldn't have been.
You said okay. You said it's to serve the metropole. For viewers who do not know what a metropole is, just
yeah. But I'm saying, when you think of colonialism in general, when Europe left Europe to go conquer new territories, it was to service Europe, right? It was in the interest to bring souls to the church. It was in the interest to find gold to build Europe. So it was to go out, bring and to build the empire back home, right? So you're building an empire. So everything that has been done from very early colonization, settlement, enslavement, etc., was in the interest of building the empire. So the queen could drive around in a golden chariot. You know, it's all gold. Where did the gold come from? You know, and the symbols on the chariot are of these, you know, enslaved people, you know, on the plantation. So all of this, there's not, but why? Because you're not human. If your humanity mattered, no, you know, people whose way of life, cultural value sees all humans as equal, do not go out and conquer other people. It's not normal. So you have been conditioned now to live in this new reality and accept to be dominated by another group. Totally unnatural, but you've started to accept your conditioning. And so now, but you know inside your spirit something is wrong. And so when they go and it is unsettled because you're still connected to your spiritual self. You know, you're still connected to that. You have all this noise going around, but your spiritual self, your soul is telling you this thing is not natural. It's not right. It's not real. So you resist it. You resist it. You get a little carnival, you get a Juve morning during COVID, and we laugh. Some of us laugh. I thought it was hilarious. But the artist is watching the bigger picture and is saying, let's do this. So now, here's the thing now. Now you're threatening livelihoods now. It's bad enough that I have to wait for you to drop the bag and then the conditions and the conditions and the condition. That's bad enough because that's just vulgar. But in the middle of the conditions and the person who still don't have a roof and still didn't get that job and all that money that's parked up somewhere, you're building on that. In the middle of all of that, you said, okay, you can't open to tourists to feed yourself because the pandemic is going to kill mind you, forget what's happening in the world. And so the people, again, logically, they go ahead with it but they're not seeing this other thing. But it's there. The artist is aware of it. The artist is writing about it. He's singing about it. She is, you know, you see if you have been paying attention to Facebook alone, you would have been seeing that this thing was coming because the people were writing about it. I wrote articles about it. People were singing about it. People were making memes about it. You know, the heart of the people is there. Okay.
But you see, the thing is,
Yeah.
But you see that,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Uh, Alicia Liverpool, Sister Alicia, hi, how are you?
Hi.
She said that's good, Rhoda. Your spiritual self alerts you when something is ain't right. But you see,
Yes.
the thing is
Yes.
too, the thing is this too, you said it was everywhere. It's on Facebook. You wrote articles about it. There's a reality of this. When we see things too much, we don't see it at all. When
Maybe.
things are all in front of our faces, we become blind to it, even if it's there.
And you're busy surviving. You're busy trying to
Yes,
live. You two
yes.
are trying to live, and you have to go figure out, deal with the banks, deal with the landlord, deal with the there's all of
Mm-hmm,
this. But so why I'm saying, going back to the whole conversation of culture, if you are grounded in your culture, in your
mm-hmm,
cultural values, you're
mm-hmm,
using those, and Alicia's right. You're using your spirit to guide you as
mm-hmm.
how to deal with this, as opposed to having this thing coming at you and telling you this is how you should do it. This is how
Mm-hmm.
you can't fix your roof because the Red Cross said, that the World Bank said, that this one said, your nails ain't right. Those things, you're getting people. I took home an elder one day, and the tears, you know, she's an older woman living by herself, her house can't fit. And the things that these, and so I'm saying to myself, my goodness, the policymakers are disconnected from their culture, because they're telling you about the regulation, and the laws and the law. And so they've become so disconnected from the humanity of it.
Yeah, humanity is key.
Yes,
Humanity is so key because we
yes,
can have whatever systems, but that human connection makes us who we really are. It's
right.
a language all by itself.
Yes. And so when you disconnect from that spiritually, and then you have these rules, at some point it breaks. It
Yeah,
breaks. And you know
definitely.
what? You know what was the breaking point? And if you're paying attention, you know it was going to come. The
Mhm.
children. The
Mm.
children. People tolerated just about all versions of the nonsense. The numbers are going up, the numbers are going down. We stopped the testing, we took the machine somewhere else. All of that conversation was taking place. But when you
Mm.
start to mess with the children, that's where the line was drawn for a lot. Forget, and you know what I was saying? I didn't even worry about the children. I was like, close it to the businesses. Close it to the businesses. Because it's when the economic pinch starts to come, is the same thing with slavery. Slavery didn't end out of the goodness of the same people who slaughtered you a few years ago. It didn't end out of the kindness of their heart, not suddenly they found their humanity. It ended because it was no longer profitable economically. Because it's the same. Do you understand?
The DJ will say wheel and come again. Like
Okay.
pull up, say
Do
that
you understand?
again. Say that again. Say
Right.
that again
When
entirely.
the
Say it again,
when the
please.
plantation was no longer profitable, when
Mm-hmm,
they couldn't squeeze more blood out of the stone, as the old people would say,
mm-hmm,
then the thing had to go. And I'm not saying that there weren't good people on the other side too, because you had people who
yeah.
had the humanitarians were also fighting for different
Mm-hmm,
reasons. Some, in the US is a whole different history, but there were also the humans on the other side as well. But it was that push when economically it was no longer sustainable, that it had to crumble. And what did they do? What did the state do? Pay off the plantation owner for loss of property, and wages. Didn't give the worker any payment, but pay the owner for loss of property and wages. So
mm-hmm.
even that was happening now in the pandemic, right? So people were losing their jobs, they're staying at home. You have people who can't go to work, casinos are closed. Okay, casinos gonna open back, okay, whatever. But you can't go out and take care of yourself any longer. So now I'm dependent on you for my survival now. And then the government is told to cut salaries. So it's building, Cut
Mm-hmm.
cut 12%, whatever. If you want this, if you want this, if you want this, if you want this, cut. Because now I, who stole from you for 300-400 years, now telling you, if you don't cut, you can't get the money that I took from you before. See how see how crazy this thing is.
But it's a loan too. It's a loan.
And it's a loan. Not
It's
even
a
give it back.
loan. You,
Not even reparations to give it back. It's a
yeah,
loan.
it's not a grant. It's a
It's
loan. So there's conditions to the
it's a
loan.
loan with vulgar conditions, with inhumane.
Vulgar, lawless. It's
Okay.
lawless.
So you
Lawless.
get all of that, and then you mess with the children.
Mm.
And so the business people were already angry. You saw that, you saw that yesterday, but they were there the 2 weeks before, or 3 weeks, I think it was. We'd gone there before. Nobody taking you seriously. Yeah, no, the rules, the law, the noise. And then you start to mess with the children. And the community, the cultural values was like, you mess with anybody, but not our children. And you know what? For the same education that we don't even want in the first place, but we need, according to your system that you put in place. And so when you start to mess with the children, and I have to say big up to people like Carl Gyhaffin, those people who are taking pictures and out there every morning and letting the rest of us feel it. Because if you're not seeing it and you're disconnected from it, you ain't really, but you want to go over. You want to go over, but you start to accept it as natural. Because my daughter's over there. She's stuck with her father for the last 2 months now. I haven't seen my daughter. This is a story of a woman yesterday. She said, my daughter, I haven't seen my daughter. A mother cut from her daughter because at the time of the lockdown, she was with her father. But because they go to school over there, she's now French, so she stays over there. But the mother is over here without her child.
Disruptive.
It's disruptive and it gets nasty. And at some point, the people said, not this time, not this time. This thing that you've been trying for so long, if we don't stop it now, once and for all, it's going to keep coming back. And we know that this is not the end of it, but it's going to keep coming back. And what do the people remind you? One island, one people, one destiny. Their core value of their oneness as a people was the thing that kept it together yesterday, was the thing that, and so the St. Martin cultural value of the oneness of the people brought everybody, regardless to where you were from, if you believed in this, and some of them for their own reasons, but at the end of the day, if you really believe in the oneness of the island, forget that nationality thing now, that card couldn't be played anymore. It was like, nah, not now. So yeah, and that was the explosion that you saw yesterday.
I should have said the visual of the young student hiding her school uniform to get to cross.
Listen.
Her crying when she finally gets to cross, she exclaimed, madness.
Yes.
Tiffany Love said, yes, that did it for me. I lost it. I cried as a mother. Olga Mussington said, separation of families. Alicia Liverpool, I whenever I call Alicia's name, I feel disrespectful because I knew her. She was 15 years old. And I always say Sister Alicia. So when I say so, I would have to say Sister Alicia. A spirit of division, she said. A spirit of division.
Yeah, and you know what? It reminds you of the days on the plantation when you weren't permitted to read. You were not permitted. Reading was a sin. So now, this idea, we're going to teach you that you're French, and we're going to teach you that you're Dutch, and you stay there, and you stay there, and now if you want our privilege of this Frenchness, of whatever makes you French and make you Dutch, if you want that privilege, you need to disconnect from who you are spiritually as a people. And that was the thing. And I wrote an article. I was talking about this, about the similarities between COVID and the plantation days. The whole, just the notion that you would ask people to go get a pass, reminiscent of the plantation. The only way the slave could move from one plantation to the next on his free day to visit his own family, he had to go get a pass. If the plantation owner was in a good mood to give it to him, you see it come back. That's their value, because these are our values as opposed to the humanity. People live on both sides of this thing, and you're disrupting families. And
Tiffany Love said, I remember as a child, Rhoda used to pull me up if my mother wasn't around. We were raised with a village mentality.
Yes.
That is gone now.
Yes. It ain't gone. I refuse to speak that language, Keoma. Remember, we talk
I
about subliminal
no, no,
messages.
this is what she mentioned. This is what she stated. She wrote
Yeah.
this, but that's the
She
reason
said it's
why when
gone
I got to
out.
that sentence, that last line, my voice went low because I didn't want to
Yeah.
read it either.
You read it. It ain't
Yeah.
gone. And we
You see
and we
this?
won't speak that. We won't speak that language
Yes.
because we won't claim it. Just like we fought against fantastically French and delightfully Dutch. You gotta every time they tell you you're not united, you gotta claim it back. We are united. Your daughter should never hear you saying we're not united,
Mm,
Tiffany. You know, you should
yeah.
our children should not hear us speak. Just like I never heard my parents talking about friend side and dot side.
Hmm.
That's brand new to me. You understand? So I ain't
Yeah.
repeating it. I don't care who bring it in, but it ain't
Hmm.
me, so I ain't going to repeat it.
I agree with you. I
Uh,
agree with you.
so tell Tiffany, don't say that to the young
I'm sure
princess.
Tiffany can hear you. So Tiffany, this is a time where you will get another pull up when you see her on the
Yeah.
road.
Yes. She know I'm
This
gonna
is where
tell
you're
her.
gonna get another pull up.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my Lord. Oh, what else? What else can we listen? This is so much and so good. It's so full of depth, and I'm so I don't even know a word. I'm so, appreciative of the fact appreciative seems too light,
Mm-hmm.
to see the engagement, the interaction today with our viewers. Tiffany Love said, yes, truth, it is dwindling, but I, the thing is, I can see shifts
Mm-hmm.
in our cultural practice. I can see
Mm-hmm.
shifts. And I would say this, so enjoying this gaffing, full of depth indeed. Yes, Sister Alicia, thank you. I came to St. Martin when I was 9 years old, right? And I think it was about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I was in town and I saw someone was walking with an umbrella, and somehow it irritated me. It
It's
irritated
different.
it
It's
irritated me because I'm like, this is St.
different.
Martin.
I know.
Right? I'm like, this is honestly like this is not St. Martin, and I know where I was born. This is normal. Wherever we go out, you get an umbrella to hide from the sun, or in St. Martin is for rain only. But when I saw it, and even persons riding bicycles to go to work, it's something that I grew up here never seeing. So I
Yeah.
can understand the shifts in our
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day practices. It's not hidden. But at the same time, I would say we still have a responsibility to
Yeah.
maintain who we really are. If I can recognize that, and persons like yourself or Rhoda and so many other persons who were born in St. Martin, who is very much engraved into the cultural form of the island, it's still our responsibility to ensure. I mean, we cannot go and stick it down in our throat, in person's throat, but we have to all do our part to
Yeah.
allow the practices that we want to be sustained to be
I
made.
I I agree with you because I'll give you a good example of it in St. Martin. Because, like I said, culture is evolution, right? It's dynamic. It changes as we change. It change, right? And that's how the world is, right? But different groups. So I go back to the word groups. Choose what it is they want to preserve, and so
Yeah.
they build their forward thinking society around the
Hmm.
values that they want to preserve, right? Values and
Yes.
practices. And so there are some societies where they'll give up the traditional wedding for the Western wedding, for example. Some have chosen to fuse the two, the
Yeah.
so-called Western, and some say, when it comes to weddings, that's one thing we're not going to adopt, right? Every group, every cultural group in the cultural space will choose what is important to that culture to preserve as a people and move forward, because you want to be part of this modern day thing. You don't know how much of it you want to adopt, but you want to be part of it because you want to be able to interact with the space, right? In St. Martin a few years ago, when I was growing up, the steel pan started to die. The steel
Mhm.
pan practice started to die. It was at least I was like, and everybody was like, oh, steel pan, it dead, being animal steel pan. And it was literally dying out because, again, it needs practitioners to thrive. And
Yes.
then it needs a society that values it to pay for it, right? Because your society also has to see value in it to be able to incentivize it for it to move on, right? And then the lone Chester York and the lone Isidore, the others were practicing too, but it was dying. It was dying as an art form to practice. And then some brilliant policymaker got together. Well, it didn't happen like that, but this is my version of it. But that you're going to put it in the schools. Again, if you start with them young, and you do it, and it's supposed to be just instead of music classes, let's put the steel pan instead of the music class, the regular flute. We did the flute in there, but let's put in the steel pan. Had you done that 20 years before, it would have been blasphemy. Where you going? What up is that steel pan thing can't do you nothing, you know. But the timing would have been right. The understanding and awareness, or maybe because the Japanese tried to play it too, maybe that made it, or Switzerland tried to, I don't know. But somehow people got motivated and it became part of the school. And now you had kids from all different ethnic persuasion that are playing an instrument traditionally would have been thought of belonging to people of Afro descent and, you know, etc. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. St. Martin's core cultural value, a core instrument, a core part of who we are. Now all of our children in the space are now being introduced to it again. Some of them don't know the history, but they know this version of it, and they make their version of it, and they sweeten it up, and they, you know, and they go into competitions abroad, etc. And they claim it. They claim it because it's now part of them. And this is what I'm saying about our values and our symbols going forward. The flag was that thing yesterday. Now, when we started 30 years ago, nobody had any clue. But because the artists, and I always give credit to Lasana for this, is saying the people are asking for something that they can rally around, that they can claim. And
an identity.
Yes, and symbolically, this year marked the 30th anniversary, the end of August, of this symbol. The 30th anniversary, 30 years after, you see it became the rallying cry for something that, but the people always knew it. They always knew it. They didn't express it overtly. In a lot of instances, some of us went a little further than the others, but nobody questioned it yesterday. Nobody. The politicians, the metropolitan, the born here, the born to be here, the just got here lately. Some didn't even ask. I know how many years people say to me, wait, why you have that foreign flag on your car? Nobody asked me that question yesterday, or did even, but some, you know, it didn't matter. It didn't matter, because now we're saying collectively, this is our pain, and we want to be able to express it in this way. So that's what culture and the effects of COVID. Do we believe that it's over? No, because it's a journey. Right? Emancipation is a journey. It's not over. But both sides, the colonizer and the colonized, need to understand this unnatural relationship is not healthy. And if we keep doing this, nobody's going to win, actually. But, you know, again, it goes back to what we started on, power and prestige. Well, the prestige, I don't know, but the power is still there. And if you keep insisting on, you know, you ever hear the people say that there are many ways to break a rock or a stone, sometimes with pressure, but sometimes just let nature flow how many years over the rock, and it will eventually break. So that's, let it take its natural course, because it is unnatural. This relationship, the colonized and the colonizer, it's an unnatural relationship. It doesn't happen anywhere else in the animal kingdom. While, you know, they have their little beefs and stuff, you don't hear the monkey saying we want to dominate the gorillas, or the doves saying we want to dominate the lizards, or whatever. It doesn't happen. It's unnatural. So it can't continue forever.
Listen, I am so absorbed.
Yes,
I am
that's
so
culture and COVID.
Yes. For persons who miss this, you have to look at the replay. Definitely. Lawrence Bash is in Guyana. He said interesting gaff again by the guest and you. Olga, thank you, Lawrence. You know what was interesting? Let me mention Lawrence. When we spoke about the ways of how persons were affected by COVID, I
Mhm.
never even thought of this. Lawrence has hemophilia, a blood disorder, right? And he depends on donors for the nonprofit to provide funds, and with persons losing their job and all that stuff, he who is now that bleeder, is basically deprived of medication. You know,
Yep.
I never ever thought of it. Never thought of it. So you see another dynamics of
Yes. Yeah.
how important. I never ever thought of it. Because when we're thinking of the effects of COVID, we're thinking about the what is before our eyes. But just to see someone who is dependent on the donations of people within an
Mm-hmm.
organization to
Right.
assist them with their health, you know.
Yep.
So
And
it's
then
something.
and then
Go
and
ahead.
then in terms of the other part of the culture and the pandemic, think of the mental health part of it, right? You mentioned
Yes.
a lot those who are
Yeah.
shut in mental health, and
Yeah.
it's the art. You saw all these big CEOs and even the athletes who were the ones that were the soul of the heart global community, the
hmm
artists, the
Yes.
artists, the mental health of, the shut in, the artists, the culture was what everyone could at least
Yes.
turn to
hmm
be able to heal from the pandemic.
Yes. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Great gaff, Keoma. Uh, Amazing as usual, Dr. Rhoda Arrindell. We need another session with Rhoda. Olga said, ladies, great program. Don't wait too
Thank you.
long for part two. We definitely have to do this for part two. Definitely.
Would be my
Definitely.
honor.
Yeah, it better be. Hello, I will nag you.
Would be
I will
my
nag you. I
honor.
must say to Miss Clara Reyes, because I contacted Clara and Clara was like, listen, I think it's best for you to just speak to Rhoda. You know, sometimes you know people, but you just forget
Yeah.
them in that moment.
Yes.
That was it right there. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
Rhoda, let me contact her. You know,
Yeah.
so thank you so much for that
Thank you.
referral, Miss Clara Ray. Thank you so much for that. Francois Carty said, very interesting and enlightening discussion, one that should be continued. Blessing. Antoinette Felix, I so agree, and I'm a living icon of this. My children only attended daycare at age 3.5. They went straight into kindergartens. I use every moment.
Mm.
Uh, Nicole DeWeaver said, artists are essential workers.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. Olga, a part two is needed indeed. All right. So, how do we close this off? I do not know how to close this off. Let's not
Is there?
close it off.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Stay tuned. I don't know.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Let's not close this off. Stay tuned to part two. We will. Do you want to do this next week? You want to do part two next week?
I'm
Or
flexible. This COVID has given me the opportunity to be flexible these days.
okay, you know what? Let us know. Okay, viewers, like really quickly, let us know if you want us to do this part two next week, or we take a break, we hop to another conversation, another gap, then we come right back. What do you want? Do you want part two next week? What is it? Let me know quick. Let us know quick, 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 quick. It's 5 o'clock. Brilliant,
Wow.
ladies. I telling us the date. Next week, part two next week. Okay, so Sharika said part two next week. Linda, I take that as a yes. Olga said next week. So we do part two next week. And
Okay.
what we do is
Thank
we
you.
will speak definitely. No, thank you. Sister Alisa said part two next week. Yes, good. So what we will speak of next week is beyond COVID. The way we started
Okay.
this conversation, it was culture in general, how the different cultures intersect. So we will just have a holistic conversation on what culture is in its widest forms, right? So we'll definitely tune into that. We will put the flyer out very soon before the weekend is over. So make sure you there. I don't know what you call it. Make sure you hit like a tab whenever there's a live. It will say like a notify me when the live is on, so just pay attention. Every week is 3 p.m. on
Okay.
Thursday. Every Thursday at 3 p.m. On my page, Beyond COVID. Yes, that's it. Thank you for that topic. Thank you
beyond
for that.
COVID.
Beyond COVID. Yes, beyond COVID. Thank you so much, Sis Alicia. Thank you for that. So, yes, wider, Olga said, we definitely need to talk wider,
Yeah.
because, I was born in Ghana, which we all know by now, moved to St. Martin at 9 years old. And again, it's a cultural shift, economic shift that brought us here, right? And that we can definitely talk of stuff like that. I have no problem sharing that either. But when I went to school here, I was not in a school with just Guyanese or St. Martiners. I was in school with so many persons, St. Lucian, Kititians, Jamaicans, Haitians. Like, it's a multicultural existence, and I can also understand. I don't want to bring it up. Who is a St. Martiner? I know this is a topic
We could
that
talk
you
about
are.
that too. We could talk
We can
about that.
talk about that.
Yes.
We can definitely talk about that,
Mhm.
But next week is going. I can feel it already. It's going to be. High. Part 2 next week. Share, share, share. Let's get a bigger audience and hope to get young people tuned in to know where they come from. Canario, thank you so much, Mr. Smith. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't know how to end it. I don't want to end it. You end this. You end
No,
this, Rhoda.
I want to end by telling you again, thanks for the opportunity. Because when you called, my mental head was in a different space, but I guess the timing too was correct. And so thanks for this opportunity. I believe very strongly, when we die, we can go with whatever little bit that we know. But when we exchange ideas, I share what I think I have, you share what you have, we exchange, we can only get better, And like you said, why we don't always like the opinions of others, we don't always appreciate it. You still have to reflect, because you still have to think about it. You have to engage. And to me, that's how you grow. And so I want to say thanks for this opportunity, and let's see what it looks like, beyond COVID. Or what it can do. Maybe the ideal St. Martin, if we were to, to design it ourselves.
That would be powerful. That would be powerful. I won't take. I hear your gratitude, but I won't own it. The reason why is I won't own it because it's necessary. It's necessary. It is necessary in order for us to know who we are and where we came from. The constructs of the layers, the construct layer by layer. We need to normalize this conversation. That's why the platform of gaffing, I do not want it to be where we're all political, we're all uptight, and we're speaking this way. We just want to chill, We just want to relax and be ourselves in the most comfortable of forms. How can we reach each other where we are? I don't know everything, but I'm receptive. I'm receptive in knowing. I'm receptive in learning. And engaging in this conversation, in these gaps, is what it's about. How can we utilize this platform to stimulate the minds of our people, including myself? How can we contribute towards moving our people forward? It's not only by a car or by a home, but it's through knowledge, because what live on after us is that the imparting of the knowledge. I learned things about myself because of what I was told about my family. I'm able to identify even more my traits because I'm aware of certain things. Some of us don't ask questions. Some of us, like myself, I ask a lot of questions. So for persons who may not even think to even begin to ask a question, we create platforms like these to put the information out there. And for our viewers, I would say this: each and every one of us have a responsibility. We can only speak, we can only engage, we can only put that information out there. But it's up to every one of us, including myself, to be receptive of it. We are the only ones who can hold ourselves accountable. So next week, we cannot say we didn't know. And if you didn't know, you can revisit the live. Your children are home right now. You can make this a part of that learning. In fact, what I did, I told my brother this. My brother has 3 girls. And I told him, I said, you know what? And I saw Tiffany Love posted it. I think it's Tiffany Love posted it. I told him in school we're only taught of other people's history, but we don't even know what's in Martin history. Who are the politicians of the past? Who are the people who did well here? We don't even know that. So I
Mhm.
encourage my brother to take our nieces at the museum and have conversations, give them books, not just on people who are from outside,
On
but
on on the note before we leave, remember I talk
sure.
about how the flag came about?
Yeah.
The research for the flag created this book, National Symbols.
Oh, I have one. I
Yeah.
have both of them.
It was in
Definitely.
that, in the research and trying to find the right symbol to represent us as a
Mhm.
people, created national symbols.
See that?
Yeah.
See that? And
Mm.
this is, again, this is our responsibility as a people. Oh, yeah, we don't know. They don't teach us this in school. Da, 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 da. Yes. Everything takes time. Transition takes time. All right.
Can can I say something about school though?
Of course.
Says Albert Einstein says like you're really educated when you forget everything they taught you in school.
Yes. Shira said a while back, she said, we need to unlearn. Rhoda,
Yes.
remind people of your books, including myself here on this platform, and where we can purchase these books.
Okay,
So
my book is Language, Culture, and Identity of St. Martin, National Symbols. I co-edited with Lasana. Those are on Arnia has National
our new
Symbols.
bookstore.
Yes, and Amazon. You can find them at Amazon and spdl.com. And
Okay.
normally Lasana has extra copies lying around, so I try to get them from him when people ask on island.
Okay. Canaria said these books belong in classrooms, and I must agree with that. We definitely need to agree with that. Um, I will close by saying this little joke. So my sister, when she was in school, she learned of Lasana Supu, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and then years after, maybe like 2, 3 years after, she heard me talk about Lasana. She was like, "Wait, what? This man didn't die?" Right? She thought it was somebody in
Who's
history
dead?
who is dead, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
I don't know if she's watching right now. And
Uh-huh.
she swore this person was some person of the past, some historic person.
Uh-huh.
And when I was like, I
No,
said,
but
what?
let me give you my version. When I was at the University of Puerto Rico doing my doctorate,
Mm-hmm.
every time they have the little flyer that they give you when a new book is coming out. And so I
Yeah.
had some of those that Santa had given me. So I went down to the English department. I put them in all the faculty mailboxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just put them in
Mm-hmm.
randomly. So one day the head of the English department comes to me. She said, Rhoda, I would like to meet with you. So I go into the department office and she has the thing in her hand, the flyer, right? And she
Mm-hmm.
said, this Mr. Siku, he's from St. Martin, and you're from St. Martin. Like, do you know how I can get in touch with him? Because we want to bring him here, to speak at it. I was like, oh, but that's my friend, And she was like, oh. But the way she carried on, like, I was like,
Yeah.
and I felt good to know a celebrity. I was like, and the way
Yeah.
she carried on about Lessa, because they teach his work. She teaches literature, right?
Mm.
Caribbean literature, world literature, and
Oh, very nice.
she's been using his work. And so
In
I
the
arranged with,
classroom.
and Lasana actually went to the University of Puerto Rico eventually and did a lecture there. But
Oh,
yeah,
very nice.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
nice. We should bring him on here too. We
Yes, you
definitely
should.
should do that. After I wrap up the COVID series, we will do all of that. But
Yeah.
when my sister said that to me, because I told her, oh yeah, I'm gonna meet Lasana because I met him sometime. She was like, Lasana?
He's not dead.
She said, I thought this man like dead, this person from the past. I said,
Mm.
no. I said this man is alive and like living. Like he's right here. Up
Yeah,
to now, we still talk about it.
yeah,
Listen, it's after 5. We're on for 2 hours and 5 minutes because we were like 5 minutes late. We need
hmm,
St. Martin history and cultures classes in schools on all levels. Yes.
yeah.
Fred York is here. Olga is here. Thank you so much. I am proud of my autographed copy of both of these important books. Olga is show-offing. Olga is
Yeah.
boasting. Listen, if we don't end it now, we're not gonna get off.
Okay, so
Um,
we see each other next
Sharika,
week.
yeah, Sharika said, yes, bring on Lasana. Viewers, thank you. Listen, thank you so much. This gaff
Thank
was
you.
powerful. And we
Thank
look
you.
forward for next week. We look
Yes.
forward for next week. Yes, Olga, we will have the flyer made within a day or two. We'll have it made and published. All right. So thank you so much for this. Thank you. And for our viewers, don't forget to go on gyhaffin.com, subscribe. You know, the platform is new. Today's our 15th episode. And it's not the intent of Gyhaffin is not just to come and talk every week, but we're really building on this platform. We really focus on building and creating social, multicultural, social impact content. That is what we're about. Multicultural, social impact content. How can we assist in moving our societies forward and on enhancing life experiences through knowledge, all right? Engagement, all right? So thank you so much to everyone who tuned in today. Send us an email, info@gyhaffin.com, subscribe on gyhaffin.com. Rhoda,
Thank you.
thank you too.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. We'll see you all next week. Rhoda,
Bye.
don't get off us yet. You don't end. Let me have a little behind the scenes with you. Bye,
Uh-huh.
everyone.